The first scent was ash, not the familiar, comforting smell of a dying campfire, but the acrid stench of a forest fire, cold and dead. My name is Kale and my world had burned. I ran through the skeletal remains of our territory, paws sinking into gray powder where green moss once grew. The silence was the worst part. No yips of the young ones, no low rumbles from my father, the Alpha. No answering howl to my own desperate calls, just the whisper of wind through charred branches. Primera, va. Ese elon. Days blurred into a desperate search. I followed the ghosts of trails we had trodden 1,000 times, my nose to the ground, searching for any sign, any scent that wasn't of death and desolation. Hunger gnawed at my belly, a dull, constant ache. I was a pack hunter, taught to coordinate, to anticipate, to work as one. Hunting alone was a different beast entirely. A lone rabbit, quick and cunning, darted from my clumsy pounce. A deer, which would have been a feast for my family, merely watched me from a distance, knowing I was no threat on my own. I was becoming a shadow, a failure. One evening, driven by a thirst that scraped my throat raw, I found a stream cutting through the blackened landscape. As I lowered my head to drink, a reflection stared back. It was me, but not me. Gaunt, ribs stark against my gray coat, eyes wide with a fear I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. And then, another reflection joined mine. A massive grizzly, its fur the color of rich earth, stood on the opposite bank. Its small, intelligent eyes were fixed on me. This was Bruin, the old king of this mountain, a creature of immense power, one our pack had always given a wide berth. I tensed, a growl rumbling in my chest, more out of instinct than any real courage. I was a starved, grieving wolf. He was a mountain incarnate. He could have ended me with a single swipe. Instead, he simply watched. He huffed, a sound like stones grinding together, and dipped his great head to drink. There was no aggression, just a shared moment of survival at the water's edge. In his ancient eyes, I saw not a threat, but a reflection of my own solitude. The forest had taken from him. He finished drinking, gave me one last, long look, and ambled back into the shadows. He had spared me. I didn't understand why, but a flicker of something other than despair ignited within me. The encounter with Bruin changed something. If he could endure, so could I. I began to hunt with a new focus, not as part of a pack, but as a single, determined survivor. I learned the patience of the fox, the stealth of the lynx. My first successful hunt was a meager squirrel, but it tasted like victory. I grew leaner, tougher. My senses, once part of a collective consciousness, sharpened to a razor's edge. I learned the language of the wind, the secrets whispered by the creaking trees. My journey took me beyond the borders of my burned home, into unfamiliar valleys and across windswept ridges. One dawn, I crested a hill and saw Ita Valley teeming with life. A vast herd of elk grazed in a meadow, their calls echoing in the crisp air. It was a hunter's paradise, but my heart sank. This was a land already claimed. On a rocky outcrop overlooking the herd, a pack of wolves watched, their silhouettes dark against the rising sun. They were sleek, well-fed, and confident. The Alpha, a huge black wolf with an air of absolute authority, stood at their center. My first instinct was to flee, to retreat to my lonely existence. But the scent of the pack, the sight of their easy camaraderie, pulled at me with an ache stronger than hunger. I was a wolf. I belonged with wolves. I couldn't go back to being a ghost. So I did the most dangerous thing a lone wolf can do. I descended into the valley. I kept my distance, staying downwind. A silent observer, I watched them hunt. Their coordination was flawless, a beautiful, deadly dance I knew so well. They brought down a young bull elk, and the valley filled with their triumphant howls. The sound pierced me, a mix of agony and longing. I couldn't help it. From my hidden spot in the tree line, I raised my own head and answered, my howl thin and reedy, full of all the loss and loneliness I carried. a terrible silence fell over the feeding pack. Every head snapped in my direction. The black alpha detached from the group, his movements fluid and menacing. He trotted towards me. Head low, a deep growl vibrating through the ground. The pack fanned out behind him, a wall of teeth and muscle. This was it, a challenge. My tired body screamed to run, but my spirit, forged in fire and solitude, stood its ground. I didn't adopt an aggressive posture. Instead, I lowered my body, tail tucked, but not between my legs. Sign of respect, not submission. I was not challenging his rule. I was asking for a chance. Isir clad me, his yellow eyes scrutinizing every inch of my scarred, skinny frame. He sniffed the air, reading my story and my sente. Ash of my old home, the scent of the grizzly, the desperation of my long journey. He stopped in front of me, so close I could feel the heat from his body. I held my breath, waiting for the snap of jaws, the end. Instead, he nudged my shoulder with his nose. It wasn't an attack, it was a question. He then turned and trotted back towards the kill. He stopped, looked back at me, and let out a short, sharp bark. An invitation? Hesitantly, I took a step, then another, until I was walking towards the pack. They parted to let me through, their eyes filled with suspicion, but they obeyed their alpha. I was allowed to eat. I ate until my belly was full, for the first time in an eternity. It was a tentative acceptance, not a true welcome. I was on probation. 4 weeks, I lived on the fringes of the pack. I was the last to eat, the first to be snapped at. Took it all. I joined the hunts, but stayed on the periphery, herding the prey, doing the hard work without expecting the glory. I showed them my skill, my stamina, my unwavering respect for their alpha, whose name I learned was Boren. Slowly, painstakingly, I earned my place. The snaps became less frequent. A young female, Silver, would sometimes drop a piece of meat near me. An older male would allow me to walk beside him on patrol. The true test came during a brutal winter storm. A blizzard descended, trapping us in a deep ravine. The elk moved on, and hunger returned to haunt the pack. A rival pack, driven from their own territory by the storm, caught our scent. They were desperate and numbered more than us. They attacked at dusk, a whirlwind of gray fur and flashing teeth in the swirling snow. The battle was chaos. I fought near Boren, guarding his flank. A huge brute of a wolf lunged for him, and without thinking, I threw myself in its path. Pain exploded in my shoulder as teeth sank deep, but I held on, giving Boren the moment he needed to counter. We fought back to back, a black wolf and a gray wolf, moving as one. We were outnumbered, but we were defending our home. We fought with the desperation of a family, and that was a force the intruders could not match. They finally broke and fled, leaving us battered but victorious. As the last of them vanished into the snow, Boren turned to me. He licked the deep wound on my shoulder, a gesture of care, of acceptance. Then he raised his head and howled. It was a long, triumphant call that echoed through the storm.